Welcome to Beyond the Card, a series that explores the lives of librarians, library patrons, and everyone who walks through that door. Get ready to open the book on the story of our lives. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Card, where we talk about libraries. Today, I have with me
Cora Eckert, community artist.
Welcome, Cora. Thank you for coming to talk to me today about libraries.
What a pleasure. I do love books.
I'm glad to hear it. So one of the questions we are going to start with today is kind of a big, broad one, and it's, why are libraries important?
It's a very large question because libraries do so much in our community. I might be biased in this regard because my mother was actually a librarian for many years before I came along. And so from a young age, we were really brought to the library really frequently. But I know that libraries, in addition to being a wealth of information, not just because now they have access to the internet, and in many cases are the only form of access for internet for many families that can't afford it. And aside from the marvelous books that are always so magical to transport us to other lands, they also provide many people with one of the few refuges they have for air conditioning in hot summers, for warmth in cold winters. They're a gathering place for many communities in order to come together and create things, to converse on a variety of subjects. A lot of libraries aren't scared to be contentious, and I think that's so good in a place that fosters a community of sharing ideas. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it
I
totally
think
does. And I think it touches on things that a lot of people don't necessarily think about when it comes to the library. I know I certainly didn't, until I started working at the library, didn't realize what a hub for the community it was, and how much it offered the community in terms of just a space to be in. One of my first years working at the library, we had several days where we were just open. So our schedule changes in the summer to not be open on Sundays whatsoever. And there was a few days last summer that were so hot that it just didn't make sense for us not to be open. And I think it was Canada Day weekend, actually. And we just stayed open as a cooling station because it was unbearable. So that was
just very serious. So
yeah. And so like I never really thought about it in terms of a space like that until I started working there. And so it's good to know that, like, out there in the community, for everyone out there in the community, that it does offer that kind of comfort as well. And I think if people are looking for those spaces, kind of be informed about, like, when it gets really hot in the summertime or it gets really cold, like, know that the library is somewhere you can come to.
Yeah. No, I had a friend when I was a young teenager. They were also a troubled teen, and for various reasons, they weren't super welcome at home. So many days they would spend in the library when they weren't at school, because it was a safe place to be. They camped out in the graphic novel section, I'm pretty sure. And that friend was the one who brought me into reading many graphic novels in my time. So yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. And I think if people get to see the library in a different way, other than just like a knowledge hub or a community, I mean, I guess it's still a community center in that it offers a lot of comfort to people who otherwise would not find it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're kind of like talking about this in your experience with the library as you knowing someone who use the library as a means of just comfort. How do you think the library has impacted you?
Oh gosh. Well, I've been a big nerd forever. And when I was younger, I was like much, much younger. I'm talking like childhood, like 7, 8 years old. I would read constantly. Like we didn't have internet easily accessible back in the day. And so libraries were my source of comfort. I did not get on a lot with my classmates. They thought it was weird that I loved to read so much. I would constantly read. I got on very well with our school librarian. I went to Cyril Varney Public School, which is now shut down, I'm pretty sure. And our librarian at the time was Mrs. Hughley. Um, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me sharing. I'm sure lots of people know her. And I'm Facebook friends with her now, actually. Oh my goodness. Wow. That goes to show how much I love librarians. Um, yeah, I would anytime we got a free period to go to the library, I checked out as many books as I could. I remember my tiny little child arms just filled with books and actually being told that like there was a limit at a certain point for children. I loved Greek mythology, and a lot of the kids would like grab a puzzle or something, or like chat, but I was always a big, big reader. Being able to transport myself to other worlds when the current world that I was in wasn't necessarily my favorite was a really big escape for me. It was just so important to my well-being and being able to survive a very difficult period of time, and continues to be a source of comfort. So that's books and libraries in general. But more recently, I was with my artistic partner, Scott Florence, and we did the Letters Project with Odd Hawks. So that was a few years ago. But
Mm.
in 2017, we started leaving a bunch of letters in the shelves of the library. We put a few in cafes and stuff, but we really got all of our responses from the library. Um, so we'd leave letters, and people would find them, and if they felt so moved, they would write to us back. And in some cases, we had an exchange. I think in one case, Scott wrote to someone, and they exchanged like 8 letters with complete strangers. And I think that really speaks to finding like treasure in the shelves of the library. Like it's a very magical experience in a magical place.
I like the way you kind of like talk about it too. As I've been doing this series and as I've been um, kind of exploring how people feel about libraries and their library experience, and it doesn't necessarily mean the one in our area or the 13 branches within our township, but just
Mhm.
libraries in general seem to hold kind of that same significance for people, but it always different. I feel like a different word always comes up when we do have these discussions. And not last session, but the session before, talking with Richard, it was about space and utilizing space and having the space, and like structure and architectural stuff kept coming up in that conversation. And I feel with us, comfort is kind of that word here, and that feeling that a library could give to you. And it's interesting in different ways because you can open a book and find comfort, or you can go there to find community comfort and interact with people who are like-minded, but also in this, there's also that you can find people that aren't like-minded and you can learn something new. And so that word comfort is interesting. So when you think about those books that you've taken out that have transported you to these other worlds, which of those, or you could choose something else within the library as well. It doesn't have to be a book. I just think a book
Mm.
might be fitting, but something that holds a significance to you that you did take out at the library.
Gosh, it is hard to pick just one. Um, I mean, the first things that I got really into when I was like 7 or 8 were Greek mythology books. I became very invested in Greek mythology, even more so once I realized that my given name has a Greek mythology root. So it comes from Cora, which is the maiden name of the goddess Persephone, who's very heavily featured in the myth of the creation of the seasons when she gets abducted by the god of the underworld and becomes queen of the underworld. But if I had to name a specific book, especially one that I took out, I think it was the Sandman series by Neil Gaiman that I took out from the library. Like I couldn't find it anywhere else, and it was very expensive because it's such a wonderful, wonderful collection of graphic novels. Um, it really spoke to creating your own mythology. While Gaiman draws upon existing mythologies, like the idea of the Sandman and the idea of gods that can control fate and sleep and dreams, um, Gaiman really created an entire world, an entire mythology of his own. And as a storyteller, that meant so much to me, not only just in the visuals, but in the writing that was created from that. So I think that would probably be my pick.
I mean, I think it's a significant pick and it's a great pick. And I think knowing you personally and knowing some of the people that I have done interviews with, it's been so interesting to see their choices and their picks and to see how they are creative people in real life and what inspires them. It's been really interesting because I feel like a lot of us don't even realize that something might have such a significance on us. For example,
Mm-hmm.
the Greek mythology in this case, and then just kind of bleeding into storytelling that you do like, those mythologies that you do like. And I don't know, it's such an interesting thing because you could take out a book at the library and not even realize what an impact it's going to have on you.
Yeah, I think it can be very surprising the effect that stories have on us. And I don't know why it's so surprising when stories really do shape our lives and that we have our own personal stories and mythologies that we share. But it continues to be surprising and delightful.
Oh, for sure. And it's weird to me too that like I can speak to someone and if we kind of look at the state of the world right now and I look back at stories that I love and that I cherish and that I absolutely adore and what I took from them, and then to see people like refute those in debate conversations about current affairs, and I sometimes wonder how someone can take something differently from
Yeah.
the stories that I grew up enjoying so much and that taught me to be a thoughtful and empathetic person and to always stand up for people, and to have other people not see that in those stories is also very interesting.
Yeah, well, stories are open to interpretation, of course, but I think, especially reflecting like on the state of the world and unrest and the scariness that many people might feel from the pandemic and the isolation, I think that one thread I've always pulled from many stories, mythologies and fiction included, is that there is hope. There's always hope, and there's always good people, and
Mm,
there's always people who want to make a better day. And that's something that I have continually found in stories and will continue to tell in my own because I believe it to be true.
for sure. So moving on to our next kind of thought bubble, we kind of talked
Mhm.
about how libraries impacted you, but is there an earliest library memory that stands out for you?
Ooh, yeah, I think so. I was really quite young. As I've mentioned, my mother was a librarian, so she had, just no problem bringing us to every library that she could to keep us entertained. And she was an avid reader with us and by herself. We also weren't super well off when I was younger, and we'd go to a toy library that was a program through the library. So it's essentially you rent toys like one would take out books from the library. You would take them
we
out.
we still kind of
And
have a program like that.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear it. It was really important. There was, I think it was one of the. Do you remember those rolling phone toys with the eyes that
Yeah.
kind of look like a camera?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of my earliest memories at the library was I was talking on that, and even though I could not read, like I must have been 2 or 3, could not read. I had a picture book, and in my mind, I remember I was reading a story to someone on the phone.
Uh,
And I remember my mom, which it's so funny to try and remember the memory because in my memory she's quite tall and bending down to talk to me, and of course now I'm like I'm the same height as you. But yes, in my memory she's asking me what I'm doing, and I was like, I'm reading a story. And then she asked me who, and I think I said to grandma, and I don't know why, but that's what toddler me thought I needed to read a story to grandma on this toy phone with, and I think it was a Robert Munch book, pretty sure, because I really loved the illustrations from them. They were very approachable and friendly.
that's
I can't remember which one though, but yeah, that would be my earliest memories in libraries is playing in the play spaces that are available, which are so wonderful for parents who need to grab their own books for their own escapes, but also need a place for children that's safe.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I definitely have like so many memories of, but that's probably the very earliest I can think of in a library space. So I'm pretty sure that was the new Sudbury Library. So yeah, I've always pretty much always been a Sudburian. So
I think Nina and I had this conversation actually about um, it couldn't have possibly been Nina. It has to be someone else. Uh, but about we were talking about the like there's like those northern gothic posts about like how there's a shared experience of driving on the highway and like hitting the test strips, but that all of us at a certain age group kind of remember when the new Sudbury Library was being renovated and going there because it had a new
yeah,
play space and there was new toys and stuff like that. So that's always funny to me.
yeah, it looks so different.
Yeah. But yeah, we do have kind of a similar program, though we don't have like a toy box where people can check out a toy. We have a plushie kind of program that so we have every location has a stuffed animal or two, and the stuffed animal also has a diary with it. And so
Oh,
the kids can check out the stuffed animal to have a sleepover, and then they can record their journey, their adventures. They're allowed to put photos in there, do drawings, and so
that
it's
is
a
adorable.
yeah,
I love that.
it's always a program that I really like, and a few kids have taken them out like more than once, so there's just like continued adventures. It's very wonderful. It's a cool program, and I think like we could maybe even think in terms of maybe creating something like that with different toys, like like a transformer or something.
Yeah, totally. But I think there's something also about the like squishy cuddliness of a plushie that
It's
makes
true.
it especially good for sleepovers as well. But
Yeah,
there are some kids who are not drawn to the squishy cuddly animals or plushies. They want the transformers and the really intricate fun toys. So
yeah.
yeah, I think.
I just think it would be interesting to approach it differently, maybe.
Mhm.
um, so in our time, we have seen libraries go from a quiet space to a study to more of a community space. Do you think that libraries have room to evolve? And if so, where do you see the library going in the future, or where would you like to see it go in the future?
Oh gosh, I already think so many libraries are doing such a great job with this. If many libraries have this space, I think that so many of them, I know that the greater Sudbury Public Library is already becoming host to many events, poetry nights. Um, I know that for the letter project, we eventually had a public reading at the library. Um, so I don't even know if I could say how it's going to evolve because it is evolving and it continues to. It's not just a space that people physically inhabit, but a place that people can access online. There's so many books that people can bring into their own homes by using the online library, which I think is fascinating. And it's so wonderful for people who can't physically get to a library, whether because of the location where they are or because they have mobility issues. Um, the library's always evolving and always continues to, and I think it really speaks to it being a collection of minds that it always finds a way to change. Um, and rebuild and restructure. So I don't even know if I can add much to the conversation when there's already so many ways in that it's already doing that.
Yeah, and I think we can always, I think what's great about the library space is that I think everyone who works there knows that it can always be better and we could always be doing something more. And we're always wanting to change and evolve. And we've taken it very seriously in the last couple of years to change accessibility and have programs like our Homebound program that allows people who don't have internet access to still access books physically. They're just a bunch of great volunteers that come and pick them up and bring them to people who need those. Need is I guess a strong word, but there is a need for those things that you enjoy and those comforts, again, those comforts, right? And we have great volunteers that come in and pick them up and drop them off to our Homebound patrons. And so we do have other means of doing so, even if it's not digitally. And I think we've just seen our library kind of, well, bigger libraries who have a larger budget than we do, or just, you know, are a bigger space and kind of have staff that is just doing online content or just doing in branch stuff. It's not something we kind of juggle everything because we are a smaller staff, and with having to stay at home and change things, we really just like saw ourselves be able to very quickly adapt to what needed to be done. And it was kind of a nice push in that we've always wanted to have a focus on online content in order to be more accessible online as well, to create a community space online as well. And I think it's fair to say that all of us kind of miss our actual library space because we do so much in that space, and sometimes things are harder to achieve online even if they are achievable. And so it's just been that adapting and kind of dividing time in order to make sure that accessibility still exists. And I think what's great about our space too is that we're always trying to make sure that everyone in the community feels heard, or that we allow for events to kind of have community involvement. And we love when facilitators reach out to us for programming, because as much as we want to inform ourselves or be knowledgeable in certain crafts or certain things, we just aren't, and we don't have the time to learn everything that we want to get out there. So we always love when someone is just like, hey, I know how to do this and I'd like to show people. So I think just being able to have that dialogue between the community is always going to make sure that we grow as a library and evolve as a community space, because it has to be the community, right? The needs of Levack are not the same as the needs of downtown, and the needs of New Sudbury are not the same as Garson. So we always kind of have to look at what those communities need. So community input is always important and helps the library evolve.
Well, I think you guys are doing a great job.
Well, thank you, Cora. Much appreciated. I very much appreciate you coming to talk to me today. Is there anything you would like to talk about? I know you do a lot of community-based stuff like improv and stuff. Is there anything you want to talk about?
Ooh, well, improv is on hold, as one
Yes.
can imagine. As we are currently, if you're listening to this later, we are currently in the pandemic and want to social distance as much as possible. But Odd Hawks is hoping to resume our improv, whether that's at the Indie Cinema or another location eventually. Before this started, we were doing twice monthly improv meetups that anyone could go to. It is for adults like 18 plus.
Mm.
But it's for anyone of any experience range. Like you don't have to be in the entertainment industry. We have people who have never done anything like that before, and we play a bunch of games. It's very approachable. There's the wonderful thing about improv is because you make it up on the spot, you can't really get it wrong.
Yep.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I, I think we could both agree that improv, both of us being theater kids and from that background, improv is so practical for everything. It's like not just
Mhm.
acting. It's not just like it helps you think on your feet. It helps you be more prepared and like very
It definitely helps with adapting in every situation because
yeah,
every
yeah.
day we're learning something new and we have to work with what we have. And improv really gives you the skill. It's like any muscle. The brain is a muscle where if you exercise it more in unusual ways, it can become more elastic and more bendy, and it can do so much more. Yeah, so it's a real mental exercise. I encourage people to check that out. We do have a page on Facebook, Odd Hawks. We also have a website, which is oddhawks.com, and it's spelled oddhawks.com. So like strange birds, basically. Yeah, and I also am on a podcast called Venture Vault. I'm sure it's been mentioned before, which is a D&D actual play podcast.
Which improv also helps with.
It absolutely does. So,
Wonderful.
yeah,
Well, thanks again for coming to have this talk with me. It was
my
nice.
pleasure.
It was comforting.
Yes, it was comforting. That is the word of the day that we will take away from this. Thank you.